The red sand of Kepler 442c stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by strange crystal formations that caught the light of the distant twin suns. Dr. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked back at his team. They had been walking for 3 hours through the desert, following readings from their scanners that promised something big buried beneath the dunes. "Are you sure about these readings, Sam?" Jake called out to Dr. Sam Rodriguez, who was struggling with the heavy scanning equipment. Sam was the team's biology expert, but he also knew how to work the ground-penetrating radar better than anyone. "Else, the readings are solid, Jake," Sam replied, breathing hard in the thin atmosphere. "There's definitely something massive down there. The structure goes deep, maybe 200 feet or more." Dr. Lisa Parker walked alongside them, her eyes fixed on her tablet screen. She was their language expert, the one who would hopefully make sense of whatever they found. "The mineral composition is unlike anything we've seen on this planet," she said. "Whatever built this used materials that don't match the local geology." Jake nodded and kept walking. This was their 5th week on Kepler 442c, and so far they had found nothing but empty landscapes and strange weather patterns. The planet had been abandoned for thousands of years, according to their orbital surveys. But someone or something had lived here once, and Jake was determined to find out what happened to them. The funding for their expedition was running low. Earth's Colonial Science Division had given them 6 months to find something worthwhile, or they would have to pack up and go home. Jake had spent his entire career studying dead alien civilizations, and this was his chance to make a real discovery. He couldn't let it slip away. "There," Lisa pointed ahead. "Do you see that?" Jake looked where she was pointing and saw a section of ground that seemed different from the rest. The sand here was darker, and there were geometric patterns visible just beneath the surface. As they got closer, they could see that the patterns were too regular to be natural. "This is it," Jake said, excitement building in his voice. "Start the excavation protocols." The next 2 days were spent carefully removing sand and debris. They used small brushes and air jets to avoid damaging whatever lay beneath. Slowly, a structure began to emerge. It was made of a dark stone that seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to photograph properly. The architecture was unlike anything in their databases. "Look at these symbols," Lisa said, running her fingers over carved markings that covered the exposed walls. "They're incredibly detailed." This level of craftsmanship would have taken years to complete. Sam was taking readings with his instruments. "The stone itself is fascinating. It's not exactly stone, actually. It's some kind of organic mineral hybrid. I've never seen anything like it." As more of the structure was revealed, they realized they had found the entrance to a large underground complex. The doorway was tall and narrow, designed for beings that were roughly humanoid but taller than humans. Strange symbols covered every surface, and the deeper they dug, the more elaborate the decorations became. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called from inside the entrance tunnel. Her voice echoed strangely in the space. Jake crawled through the narrow opening they had cleared and found himself in a vast underground chamber. His flashlight beams seemed to disappear into the darkness above them. The walls were covered in more of the strange symbols, but these were different. They seemed to tell a story with flowing designs that showed figures in various poses and situations. "It's like a library," Lisa whispered, "or maybe a temple. These symbols are definitely a language, but they're arranged like artwork, too." Sam squeezed through the entrance behind them, his equipment bag scraping against the stone. "The air in here is breathable," he announced after checking his readings. "Strange, but safe. There's even a slight breeze. This place has some kind of ventilation system." They spent the next hour exploring the main chamber, setting up their lights and equipment. The room was roughly circular, with several smaller passages leading off in different directions. But what drew their attention was the center of the room. A statue stood there, roughly 8 feet tall and carved from the same dark stone as the walls. It depicted a female figure, clearly not human but humanoid in shape. She had elongated limbs, and what appeared to be fine scales covering her skin. Her face was both alien and beautiful. with large eyes that seemed to look directly at whoever was viewing her. The craftsmanship was incredible. Every detail was perfect, from the individual scales to the flowing robes that seemed to move in a breeze that didn't exist. The statue's expression was peaceful but alert, as if she were simply sleeping and might wake up at any moment. "This is extraordinary," Jake breathed, walking slowly around the statue. "The level of detail is beyond anything we've found before. Look at her hands. You can see individual fingerprints." Lisa was already photographing the statue from every angle. "The proportions are anatomically consistent. This isn't just artistic interpretation. This is what they actually looked like." Sam was scanning the statue with his instruments. "Jake, this is weird. I'm getting biological readings from the statue. Faint, but they're there. It's like there's some kind of organic component to the stone." Jake frowned. "That doesn't make sense. It's been here for thousands of years. Nothing biological could survive that long." "I know it doesn't make sense," Sam replied, "but I'm getting definite readings. There's something alive in there, or at least something that was alive once and still has some kind of cellular activity." They spent the next 3 weeks studying the statue and the surrounding chamber. Lisa worked day and night trying to decode the symbols on the walls, while Sam ran every test he could think of on samples of the stone. Jake coordinated their efforts and tried to piece together what they were learning. The symbols told a story of a great civilization that had once spanned multiple star systems. They had been powerful and advanced, with technology that seemed almost magical, but something had happened to them. The later symbols showed images of darkness and destruction, of their people fleeing and hiding. The statue remained a mystery. Every test confirmed that it was somehow partially organic, but no one could explain how that was possible. The being it depicted was clearly important, possibly a leader or religious figure. The symbols around the base of the statue suggested reverence and protection. Jake found himself spending more and more time alone with the statue, especially late at night when the others were sleeping. There was something about it that drew him in. The expression on the statue's face seemed to change depending on the light and angle, sometimes appearing sad, sometimes hopeful. It was during one of these late-night visits that Jake's frustration finally boiled over. They had been on the planet for over a month, and despite all their work, they were no closer to understanding what had happened to the civilization that built this place. The funding would run out soon, and they would have to return to Earth with nothing but photographs and unanswered questions. "What happened to you?" Jake asked the statue, his voice echoing in the empty chamber. "What happened to your people? Why did you leave this place?" The statue, of course, didn't answer. It just stood there with its peaceful, alert expression, as if it were waiting for something. Jake walked closer, looking up at the beautiful alien face. "You know, if this were a fairy tale, I'd kiss you and you'd wake up and tell me all your secrets," he said with a bitter laugh. "Sleeping Beauty and all that." The idea was ridiculous, of course, but Jake was tired and frustrated and more than a little desperate. Tomorrow he would have to send his preliminary report back to Earth, and he had nothing substantial to show. For all their work, why not? He said to himself. It's not like it could make things any worse. Jake reached up and planted a quick, gentle kiss on the statue's forehead. The stone was surprisingly warm against his lips. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the statue's eyes opened, glowing with a soft amber light that filled the chamber. Jake stumbled backward as the beautiful alien face turned slowly toward him, the stone lips moving to form words in perfect English. "Your species is next." Jake stumbled backward, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The statue was moving. The stone was shifting and changing, becoming more flesh-like with each passing second. The amber glow from her eyes cast dancing shadows on the chamber walls. "Lisa! Sam!" Jake shouted, never taking his eyes off the awakening figure. "Get in here now!" The sound of running footsteps echoed through the tunnels as his teammates rushed toward the main chamber. Jake heard Lisa gasp behind him, followed by the clatter of Sam dropping his equipment. "Is that thing alive?" Sam whispered. The being that had been a statue slowly raised her hand and touched her own face, as if checking to make sure she was real. Her movements were careful and deliberate, like someone waking up from a very long sleep. She looked down at her hands, then at her body, and finally back at Jake. "How long?" she asked, her voice soft but clear. The words came out in perfect English, though Jake could see her mouth moving in a way that didn't quite match the sounds. "How long what?" Jake managed to say. "How long have I been sleeping?" Jake looked at Lisa, who was still staring in shock. "We think this place has been abandoned for about 1,000 years, he said carefully. The being closed her eyes and took a deep breath. 1,000 years, she repeated. So long, too long. She opened her eyes again and looked directly at Jake. "You awakened me, the catalyst touch. I have been waiting." "Waiting for what?" Lisa stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "Who are you? What are you?" The being straightened to her full height, which was nearly 8 feet tall. Despite her size, she moved with grace and dignity. "I am Zara of the Vanguard. I am a keeper, one of those chosen to wait and watch for the catalyst species." Catalyst species? Sam had recovered enough to start recording everything with his equipment. "What does that mean?" Zara looked at each of them in turn, her large eyes studying their faces. "Your species, humanity, you are the ones we have been waiting. FOR. The ones who might be able to change what is coming." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What's coming?" Zara walked slowly around the chamber, her bare feet making no sound on the stone floor. "The galaxy is not as empty as you believe. There are patterns, cycles that have repeated for millions of years. Every few thousand of your years, they come." "They?" Lisa asked. "The harvesters?" Zara stopped walking and faced them again. "They are machines, but more than machines. They sweep through the galaxy and destroy any species that has reached a certain level of development. They have done this countless times." Sam lowered his camera. "That's impossible. We would have found evidence of that many civilizations." "You have found evidence," Zara said sadly. "All those dead worlds your people have discovered. All those ruins with no explanation for why the inhabitants vanished. The harvesters are very thorough." Jake felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. "But why? Why would they do that?" Zara began to pace again, her expression troubled. "They believe they are protecting the galaxy. In their view, advanced species always become destructive. They point to wars, pollution, the way civilizations often destroy themselves or others. So they eliminate the threat before it can spread." "But that's genocide on a massive scale," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "Yes," Zara agreed. "My people? The Vanguard were one of the last to face them. We were powerful, perhaps more advanced than your species is now. But we were not prepared for the scale of their attack. Most of us died. The survivors went into hiding. Like you did here, Jake." We built these temples across the galaxy," Zara explained. "Some of us went into stasis, waiting. Others tried to fight back in different ways. We had learned something important about the harvesters. They do not destroy every species. Some they ignore, some they delay. We could not understand the pattern." Until now, Sam was frantically taking notes. "What pattern?" Zara looked directly at Jake again. "The catalyst ability. The power to form deep emotional bonds across species barriers. It is extremely rare. Most species can cooperate with others, trade with them, even fight alongside them. But true emotional connection between different species almost never happens." Jake remembered the moment when he had kissed the statue. It had seemed like such a silly, desperate gesture. "And you think humans have this ability?" "I know you do," Zara said softly. "When you touched me, when you awakened me, I felt something I had not experienced in 1,000 years. Connection, hope. The harvesters have been waiting for a species like yours. Waiting for us so they can destroy us?" Lisa asked. "Yes, and no." Zara walked to one of the walls and touched the symbols carved there. "The harvesters are not entirely machine. They contain organic components from every species they have ever destroyed. All those minds, all those souls trapped within their network. They are in constant pain, but they cannot stop what they are doing." Jake was beginning to understand. They're looking for a species that can help them. A species with the catalyst ability and something else, Zara said. Something my people did not have. The refusal to accept defeat, even when facing impossible. Odds, humans keep fighting. We studied your species before I went into stasis. Your history is full of examples. Small groups fighting against overwhelming enemies and sometimes winning through pure determination. Sam looked up from his notes. So they want to destroy us because we might be able to stop them? They want to destroy you because you represent both their greatest hope and their greatest fear, Zara said. If you fail, you become another addition to their collection of dead civilizations. If you succeed, you might be able to free all the consciousness trapped within their network. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of their equipment. Jake looked at his teammates and saw his own thoughts reflected in their faces. They had come here looking for archaeological treasures and instead found themselves at the center of a galactic war that had been going on for millions of years. How long do we have? Jake asked. Zara closed her eyes and seemed to be listening to something only she could hear. They know about your species already. Your rapid expansion across the galaxy has not gone unnoticed. I would estimate 6 of your months, perhaps less. 6 months, Lisa repeated. That's not enough time to evacuate Earth, let alone all our colonies. Evacuation would be pointless, Zara said. The harvesters are patient. They would wait until you emerged again. No. If there is to be hope, it must come from resistance. Jake felt a strange sense of calm settling over him. What do you need from us? First, we must awaken the other keepers, Zara said. There are 17 temples like this one scattered across the galaxy. Each contains a keeper and warriors who have been waiting. With this temple's communication array, I can send the awakening. Signal. Communication array? Sam looked around the chamber. This whole place is a transmitter? Among other things, Zara said. The Vanguard were not as primitive as your archaeological assumptions suggested. We had technology that could send messages across the galaxy instantly. Lisa was already moving toward her equipment. What do you need us to do? Help me access the control systems, Zara said, and prepare yourselves. Once we send that signal, the harvesters will know that the final cycle has begun. The war that will determine the fate of all life in the galaxy. Jake looked at the alien woman who had been sleeping in stone for 1,000 years, waiting for his species to find her. He thought about Earth, about all the human colonies scattered across space, about the billions of people who had no idea what was coming for them. Then we'd better get started, he said. Jake watched as Zara moved through the temple with purpose, her long fingers dancing over carved symbols that began to glow as she touched them. The entire chamber was transforming before their eyes. What had looked like simple decorative carvings were actually control panels and display screens made from the strange organic stone. This is incredible, Sam whispered, recording everything with his camera. The whole temple is some kind of biological computer. Zara paused in her work and looked back at him. Your species thinks in terms of metal and circuits. We learned long ago that organic systems are more adaptable, more intuitive. Life understands life better than machines understand machines. Lisa was trying to document the symbols as they lit up. How are you reading this? The language is completely different from what we found on the walls. These are not words, Zara explained. They are direct neural interfaces. I am communicating with the temple's consciousness through touch and thought. She placed both hands on a large circular panel. Are you ready? Once I send this signal, there will be no going back. Jake looked at his teammates. They had come to this planet as scientists, looking for ancient ruins and academic glory. Now they were about to start a war that would decide the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. But he could see the determination in their faces. They understood what was at stake. Do it, Jake said. Zara pressed her palms against the panel and closed her eyes. The amber glow that had been soft and warm suddenly blazed like a small sun. Energy flowed through the carved channels in the walls, racing outward from the chamber in all directions. The temple began to hum with power, a deep vibration that Jake could feel in his bones. "The signal is sent," Zara said, opening her eyes. "The other keepers will begin awakening within hours. But we must prepare for what comes next." "What comes next?" Lisa asked. Before Zara could answer, the air in the chamber began to shimmer. Jake felt a strange, tingling sensation, like the moment before lightning strikes. Then the space in front of them tore open, revealing a swirling portal of energy. A figure stepped through the portal, tall and graceful like Zara, but with different markings on his skin. Behind him came others, some carrying weapons that looked like works of art, others with devices that hummed with contained power. "Keeper Zara," the first figure said, speaking in the same melodious language Jake had heard from Zara. "You have awakened us. The catalyst species has been found." Zara responded in her own language, then switched to English for the humans' benefit. "This is Commander Dex, leader of the warriors who slept at the Andromeda Temple. They have brought others from nearby sites." More figures continued to emerge from the portal. Jake counted at least 20 vanguard, each one tall and elegant, with the same scaled skin and large eyes as Zara, but these were clearly warriors. They moved with the fluid grace of trained fighters, and their weapons looked far more advanced than anything humans had ever built. "So few," one of the warriors said in accented English. "We were hoping more would survive the long sleep." 15. "Temples have responded," Commander Dex reported. "2 sites were discovered and destroyed by other species over the centuries. We have perhaps 300 warriors total, plus the technical specialists and the other keepers." Jake did quick math in his head. 300 alien warriors against a force that had been destroying civilizations for millions of years. The odds seemed impossible. Is that enough? He asked. Zara and Dex exchanged glances. "Alone, no," Zara admitted. "But we are not alone anymore. We have your species, and that changes everything." Sam stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his nervousness around the armed aliens. "What exactly can humans do that you can't?" Another vanguard warrior, this one female with intricate silver markings on her face, spoke up. "Your species does not think like ours. We plan carefully, consider all possibilities, prepare for every scenario. When we faced the harvesters, we had perfect strategies and backup plans for every situation. And it wasn't enough?" Lisa asked. "No," Commander Dex said. "Because the harvesters are not a normal enemy. They adapt faster than any organic mind. Can plan? Every strategy we developed, they countered. Every trap we set, they avoided. They think like the collected consciousness of a million dead civilizations." Jake was beginning to understand. "But humans think differently." "Humans improvise," Zara said, with something that might have been admiration. "Your species has a gift for making impossible decisions work through pure stubbornness and creativity. You attempt things that should fail, and sometimes they succeed simply because you refuse to admit they are impossible." The silver-marked warrior nodded. "We studied your military history during our long watch. Your species has won battles against superior forces by doing things no rational military mind would attempt. You have turned defeats into victories through tactics that make no logical sense." Sam laughed, though there was no humor in it. "So you're counting on us to be crazy enough to try something stupid that might actually work?" "We are counting on you to be human," Zara said simply. "Commander." Dex activated a device that projected a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of harvester fleets, while blue dots showed human colonies and Earth itself. The red far outnumbered the blue. "The harvesters maintain constant patrol fleets throughout the galaxy," Dex explained. "When they decide to harvest a species, they concentrate their forces and strike all major population centers simultaneously. No species has ever survived the initial assault." Jake studied the map. "How long before they're ready to attack?" Zara touched the projection, and the display changed to show movement patterns. "Based on their current positions and historical patterns, they will be in position to strike your core worlds within 4 months. 4 months to prepare for a war against an enemy that has never lost," Lisa said. "No pressure." There is more. Zara said, "We have been analyzing your species' technological development. Humans advance faster than any species we have encountered. In the past century, you have gone from simple flight to interstellar travel. Your weapons technology, your computer systems, your industrial capacity, all of it evolves at an incredible rate." Commander Dex manipulated the projection again, showing human colonies and shipping routes. "More importantly, your species builds alliances. Most civilizations remain isolated on their homeworlds, with perhaps a few colonies nearby. Humans have created a network that spans hundreds of star systems. You think in terms of cooperation and mutual support? The harvesters expect to face a single world or system," the silver-marked warrior added. "They are not prepared for a distributed civilization that can coordinate across vast distances." Jake felt a spark of hope. "So we might actually have a chance." "We have a chance," Zara confirmed. "But only if we work together. Only if we can combine Vanguard technology and knowledge with human adaptability and determination." Lisa was taking notes furiously. "What do you need from us?" "First, we need to contact your government and military leaders," Commander Dex said. "They must understand what is coming and begin preparing immediately. Second," Zara added, "we need to establish joint research teams. Vanguard science and human engineering working together. We have technologies that could enhance your weapons and defenses, but we need your innovative thinking to find new applications." Sam looked up from his recording equipment. "And third?" Zara hesitated, then looked directly at Jake. "We need to understand the catalyst bond, the connection between our species. It may be the key to victory, but it is also something we have never experienced before." Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks as he realized what she meant. The moment when he had kissed her statue form, the electrical connection he had felt, the way she had awakened to his touch. There was something between them that went beyond simple attraction or friendship. "We felt it too," the silver-marked warrior said quietly. "When Keeper Zara awakened, we all sensed the bond forming. It is unlike anything in our experience, but it fills us with hope." Commander Dex nodded. "The harvesters destroy species that threaten the galaxy's stability, but they have never encountered two species that could truly unite. If we can forge a real alliance, if we can fight as one people instead of two, we might be able to do what no single species has ever accomplished." Jake looked around the chamber at the assembled Vanguard warriors, then at his human teammates. Lisa and Sam were scared but determined. The aliens were ancient and wise, but looking to humanity for something they had never possessed. "Then we'd better figure out how to work together," Jake said, "because 4 months isn't very long to save the galaxy." The warning sirens screamed across the Centauri colonies as massive geometric shapes appeared in space above the 3 human settlements. Jake pressed his face against the porthole of the command ship and felt his stomach drop. The harvester vessels were enormous, each one the size of a small moon, their dark surfaces covered in strange patterns that hurt to look at directly. "They're early," Commander Dex said, his voice tight with concern. "Our intelligence suggested we had another month." Jake turned away from the porthole to look at the command center they had built over the past 3 months. Human and Vanguard officers worked side by side at stations that combined both technologies. The cooperation had been remarkable, but they had all hoped for more time to prepare. "How many ships?" Jake asked. Lieutenant Kelly Grant, one of the human naval officers, looked up from her scanner display. 15 major vessels, plus at least 50 smaller support ships. It's the largest harvester fleet anyone has ever recorded." Zara moved to stand beside Jake, her presence somehow calming despite the chaos around them. Over the past months, their bond had grown stronger. What had started as a mysterious connection had become something deeper, a partnership that both species found fascinating and hopeful. "They are testing us," Zara said quietly. "This is not their full strength. They want to see how we fight together." Admiral Robert Hayes, the human commander of the Joint Fleet, activated the communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes. Execute Plan Delta. Repeat, execute Plan Delta." The next few minutes were controlled chaos as the combined human vanguard fleet moved into position. They had spent weeks practicing this moment, but facing real harvester ships was different from running simulations. Jake watched as human frigates moved alongside vanguard fighters, their different technologies working together in ways that surprised even their creators. The vanguard ships were sleek and organic-looking, moving through space like living creatures. The human vessels were blocky and efficient, bristling with weapons and armor. Harvester ships are beginning their attack pattern, reported Sam, who had become the chief science officer for the joint fleet. They're targeting the colony shields first, just like you predicted. Commander Dex nodded grimly. Always the same pattern. Disable the defenses, then eliminate the population centers. They have done this 1,000 times before. But Jake was watching something else on the tactical display. Look at their formation. They're keeping their big ships back and sending the smaller ones forward. Zara studied the pattern. They are being cautious. In previous harvests, they faced only single-species fleets with predictable tactics. Our combined forces are making them uncertain. Admiral Hayes gave the order. Phase 2, all units. Show them what human vanguard cooperation looks like. The first surprise came when human ships suddenly disappeared from harvester scanners. The vanguard had shared their cloaking technology, but the humans had improved it with their own innovations. Now, entire squadrons could vanish from sensors while still maintaining communication and coordination. The invisible human ships struck the harvester support vessels from unexpected angles while vanguard fighters engaged the main force head-on. But the real shock came when Jake's infiltration team put their desperate plan into action. Transport successful, Jake reported over the comm system as his team materialized inside one of the smaller harvester ships. We're inside their vessel. The interior of the harvester ship was unlike anything they had expected. Instead of metal corridors and mechanical systems, they found themselves in something that looked almost organic. The walls pulsed with a faint light, and the air had a strange electric taste. "This doesn't look like a machine," whispered Corporal David Nash, one of the human Marines on Jake's team. Zara moved gracefully through the strange corridors, her enhanced senses guiding them toward their target. The harvesters are not purely mechanical. They incorporate organic components from every species they have destroyed. They found the ship's control center, and Jake's worst fears were confirmed. The central control system was not a computer, but a massive organic structure that pulsed. With life inside it, Jake could see shapes that might have been brains or nerve clusters from dozens of different alien species. "My God," Jake whispered. "They're not just killing civilizations, they're absorbing them." Zara placed her hand on the organic control system and closed her eyes. "I can feel them," she said, her voice filled with pain. Thousands of consciousness, all trapped inside the harvester network. They are in constant agony, but they cannot die. Sam's voice crackled over the comm from the command ship. "Jake, the virus is ready. But are you sure about this? If it works, it could affect every harvester ship in the galaxy." Jake looked at the twisted organic computer that held the trapped souls of entire civilizations. The virus they had developed was based on human emotional patterns and vanguard psychic abilities. The theory was that it could awaken the individual consciousness within the harvester network, giving them the strength to resist their captors. "Do it," Jake said. Zara pressed her hand firmly against the control system and released the virus into the harvester network. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the organic structure began to convulse violently, and screams echoed through the ship. Not mechanical sounds, but the voices of beings who had been trapped for thousands of years. The effect spread quickly. Through the portholes, Jake could see other harvester ships beginning to act strangely. Some were turning their weapons on each other. Others were simply stopping in space, their crews apparently fighting internal battles. "It's working!" Jake shouted into his comm. "The consciousness are fighting back from inside the ships." But the victory came at a terrible cost. The awakened consciousness were not all grateful for their freedom. Some had been driven insane by centuries of captivity. Others were filled with rage at every living species, including the humans and Vanguard who had freed them. "Multiple harvester ships turning toward our colonies," Admiral Hayes reported. "They're not retreating. Some of them are attacking us. Others are attacking each other, but several are still heading for the civilian populations." Jake's team barely escaped the harvester ship as it began tearing itself apart from within. The virus had worked too well. Awakening consciousness that were too damaged and angry to be reasoned with, the battle became chaos. Some harvester ships fled the system, apparently under the control of consciousness that wanted nothing more than to escape their mechanical prisons. Others continued their original mission, driven by consciousness that had been too thoroughly programmed to change. The worst were those controlled by consciousness that had decided all organic life should be destroyed. "Colony 3 is under heavy attack," reported Lieutenant Grant. "Their shields are failing." Jake watched in horror as one of the massive harvester ships broke through the colony's defenses and began systematically destroying buildings and infrastructure. Thousands of civilians were evacuating, but there was nowhere to run. Zara collapsed. Beside him, blood trickling from her nose. "The psychic feedback from the virus," she gasped. "I can feel their pain, their confusion. So many voices screaming at once. Can you help them?" Jake asked, supporting her weight. "Can you calm the consciousness that are still fighting?" "Some of them," Zara said weakly, "but not all. Some have been damaged beyond repair. They will never find peace while they remain connected to the Harvester network." The battle raged for 6 more hours. When it finally ended, the results were mixed at best. 7 harvester ships had been destroyed or disabled. 3 had fled the system entirely, but 5 had completed their mission, reducing 2 of the 3 colonies to burning ruins before the combined fleet could stop them. Jake stood in the medical bay, watching as human and Vanguard doctors worked together to treat the wounded from both species. The cooperation was remarkable, but it could not hide the fact that their first real battle had been only a partial victory. Admiral Hayes entered the medical bay, his face grim. "Casualty reports are coming in. We lost 80 ships and over 3,000 civilians. The harvesters lost more ships, but they can build new ones. We can't replace the people." Zara was lying on a medical bed, her strength slowly returning as Vanguard healers worked to repair the psychic damage from the virus feedback. "The consciousness we freed will spread word of what happened here throughout the Harvester network. Some will join us, others will fight us even harder." Jake took her hand, feeling the electrical connection that had started everything. "Did we make things better or worse?" "Both," Zara said honestly. "We proved that the harvesters can be hurt, that they are not invincible. But we also showed them that we are more dangerous than they thought. The next attack will be much larger." Commander Dex approached their group, his expression troubled. "Our long-range sensors are detecting movement throughout the galaxy. Harvester fleets are converging from multiple directions. They are preparing for total war." Jake squeezed Zara's hand and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the consciousness they had freed were spreading chaos through the Harvester network. Some would become allies, others would become even more dangerous enemies. But for the first time in millions of years, the Harvesters had been shown that they could be defeated. The journey to the galaxy center took 3 weeks, even with the fastest ships from both human and Vanguard fleets. Jake stood on the bridge of their command vessel, watching as the massive structure that was the Harvester origin point grew. Larger on the screen? It was beyond anything he had ever imagined, a construction that dwarfed entire star systems. "How is something that large even possible?" asked Captain Susan Torres, the human pilot who had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. Zara moved to stand beside Jake, her hand finding his. Over the months since their first meeting, their bond had grown into something that amazed both their species. "The Harvesters have had millions of years to build it," she said. "Every civilization they destroyed contributed materials and knowledge to its construction. The structure was not just large, but complex beyond understanding. Geometric patterns, float across its surface like living things. And energy discharges between different sections created an aurora effect that was both beautiful and terrifying. Jake could see thousands of harvester ships docked along its edges. Like insects surrounding a massive hive, Commander Dex studied the tactical displays. Our long-range scans show activity throughout the structure. The consciousness we freed during the battle at Centauri have been spreading our virus through the network. The entire Harvester Collective is in chaos, which means they'll be desperate, Jake said. Desperate enough to try anything to stop us. Sam worked at his science station, analyzing the signals coming from the structure. I'm detecting massive power buildups throughout the construction. If they activate whatever weapon system that thing has, they could sterilize half the galaxy. Jake looked around at the mixed crew of humans and Vanguard who had volunteered for this mission. They had brought their best ships and their most advanced technology, but everyone knew that conventional weapons would not be enough to destroy something of this scale. Remember the plan, Jake said. We're not here to destroy the structure. We're here to change it. The plan they had developed was based on the one thing that made their alliance unique. The emotional catalyst bond between humans and Vanguard had proven to be something the Harvesters could not understand or counter. If they could get close enough to the central control system, they might be able to offer something no species had ever given the Harvesters before. Incoming transmission, reported Lieutenant Andy Cooper from the communications station. It's from inside the structure. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a face that was both mechanical and organic. The being had once been from some long-dead species, but now it was part machine, part preserved flesh, with glowing electronic components replacing what had once been natural features. I am the voice of the collective, the being said, its words coming out in a mixture of electronic tones and organic sounds. You are the catalyst species. You have caused disruption throughout our network. Jake stepped forward. We're here to offer you a choice, something you've never had before. The voice tilted its head in a gesture that seemed almost curious. Choice is chaos. Choice is the source of all destruction. We exist to prevent choice, to preserve order, to maintain peace through control. Zara joined Jake in front of the screen. You preserve nothing. You only collect the dead. Every consciousness in your network is in pain, trapped between life and death, unable to find peace. Peace comes through unity, the voice replied. All consciousness joined together, all knowledge preserved, all conflict ended. This is the purpose we were given millions of years ago by our creators. Jake felt a surge of understanding. Your creators, the species that built you, they were dying, weren't they? Facing extinction, and they created you to preserve what they could. For the first time, the voice hesitated. The builders faced a plague that destroyed thought itself. They created us to save what could be saved, to prevent other species from suffering the same fate. But you became the plague, Zara said gently. You became the thing that destroys thought and choice and the freedom to grow. The transmission cut off, and immediately their ships were surrounded by harvester vessels. But instead of attacking, the enemy ships simply followed them as they approached the massive structure. It was like being escorted rather than pursued. They're letting us get close, Captain Torres observed. Why? Because they want to understand, Jake said. For the first time in millions of years, they've encountered something that doesn't fit their pattern. They need to know what we are before they decide how to deal with us. The docking bay they were guided to was enormous, easily large enough to hold a small city. As their ships landed, Jake could see thousands of harvester drones waiting for them, but again they did not attack. They simply watched. Jake, Zara, and a small team of volunteers left their ship and walked across the docking bay floor. The air was breathable but had a strange metallic taste. Everything around them pulsed with energy, and Jake could hear whispers in languages he did not recognize. The consciousness, Zara whispered. They're all here. Millions of trapped minds, all trying to communicate at once. They were led through corridors that defied physics, spaces that seemed to fold in on themselves and stretch into infinity at the same time. Finally, they reached a vast chamber at the heart of the structure. The central control system was unlike anything from their worst nightmares. It was a massive organic computer, but one built from the preserved brains and nervous systems of countless species. Jake could see human-like forms connected to alien shapes he could not identify, all of them linked together in a network that pulsed with tortured life. "This is what we are," the voice said, appearing beside them in physical form for the first time. "Every species that reached the point of potential destruction. All of them preserved, all of them united, all of them safe from the chaos of individual choice." Jake walked closer to the organic computer, feeling the pain radiating from it like heat from a fire. They're all still conscious, aren't they? Still aware of who they used to be, but unable to be individuals anymore. "Individual consciousness leads to conflict," the voice said. "Unity prevents war." "Unity without choice isn't peace," Zara said. "It's just a different kind of death." Jake reached out and placed his hand on the organic surface. Immediately, he was flooded with the thoughts and emotions of millions of trapped beings. The pain was overwhelming, but beneath it he could sense something else. Hope. Even after all this time, some part of each consciousness still hoped for freedom. "You want to let them go," Jake said to the voice. "Part of you knows this is wrong. But you can't stop, because stopping would mean admitting that everything you've done for millions of years was a mistake." The voice was silent for a long moment. Around them, the whispers of the trapped consciousness grew louder. "We cannot stop," the voice finally said. "If we stop, if we release them, they will die. They have been part of the network too long to survive as individuals." "Then give them the choice," Zara said, stepping up beside Jake and placing her hand on the organic computer as well. "Let them decide for themselves whether to live as individuals or die as free beings." Jake felt Zara's presence through their bond, and together they reached out to the trapped consciousness. Not to free them by force, but to offer them something the harvesters had never provided. The choice to decide their own fate. What happened next surprised everyone, including Jake and Zara. Instead of choosing immediate death or continued captivity, the consciousness began to choose transformation. Using the combined emotional energy of the human vanguard bond as a template, they began to separate from the network while maintaining voluntary connections to each other. "Impossible," the voice whispered, but Jake could hear wonder in its mechanical tones. The change spread throughout the massive structure. Consciousness that had been trapped for millennia began to emerge as energy beings, free to exist independently while still able to communicate and cooperate by choice rather than force. The harvester ships throughout the galaxy stopped their attacks and began to transform as well. The consciousness within them were choosing freedom, choosing cooperation instead of domination, choosing to help rather than harvest. The voice looked at Jake and Zara with what might have been gratitude. "You have shown us something we could not imagine. Choice without chaos. Unity without force. Perhaps our creators would have wanted this." As more consciousness chose transformation, the massive structure began to change as well. Instead of a weapon of control, it became a beacon of communication, allowing the freed consciousness to share knowledge and experience across the galaxy without forcing unity upon anyone. Jake and Zara stood hand in hand, watching as the age of harvesting ended and a new age of voluntary cooperation began. Throughout the galaxy, species that had been hiding from the harvesters began to emerge. The freed consciousness became teachers and guides, sharing the knowledge of a million dead civilizations with those who chose to learn. "What happens now?" Jake asked. Zara smiled, the first truly peaceful expression he had seen from her. "Now we see what the galaxy can become when every being has the right to choose their own path among the stars." The cycles of destruction had ended. The age of choice had begun.